Lakshmi Anand here, and welcome to this episode of In Tune featuring the Mridangist Praveen Sparsh. Shri Praveen articulates his journey from the basics to the one class that taught him to play for the music. He also shares thoughts on his celebrated grandfather, the beloved Mridangist Thanjavur Shri Upendran. Also included are two pieces of original music. Besides never before seen vintage photos, the detailed article on LakshmiAnand.com features Dr. S. Soumya, Shri T. M. Krishna, Srimati Gauri Ramnarayan, and Shri Kannan Balakrishnan sharing their thoughts on Shri Praveen. Do visit LakshmiAnand.com, LakshmiAnand.com for much more on Shri Praveen and many other Indian classical musicians. So tell me now, when growing up, so you didn't meet your grandfather.
Right.
Was your mother trained in music?
No.
Okay. So how does your mother have siblings?
Yes.
Okay.
He is a computer engineer.
Okay.
He's in the US.
Okay.
Again, didn't want to be associated with music.
Okay.
So he moved out of the house and he had his own thing.
Okay.
So, but yes, he was just a computer. He never wanted to train in music.
So was your mother? Have you met your grandmother?
Yes, yeah. She's still very much.
Oh, she's still there.
Yeah, she's very much.
Okay. Has she shared her thoughts on what she thinks about your taking up the mantle? Of what her husband did. Was she happy about it and excited? And
I think in their eyes, again, my party is not so connected with the field. She's not the one who attends kacheris every day.
Okay.
She's that way kind of disconnected from the field. She's just like family and whatever it is. So I think there's this inner joy that I'm still playing the instrument that, my tata played. But not too much about what am I doing in the field, where am I standing, whom I'm playing with. Those things are not playing in her head. So I think just the fact that I'm playing the instrument you'll see that there's some inner joy in her that I'm playing that instrument.
Did your tata not insist on his family taking up music, or he just did his thing and he didn't?
I don't think he was thinking in that direction.
Okay.
He also passed away konja early, he was in his 50s.
I know. Was he ailing? Because there are no details about, we just know he passed away.
So he had an ailment and then suddenly 2-3 months and then he passed away.
Okay.
So he also, I don't think he was planning for his legacy or anything like that. So he was just that way untimely. So I'm not too sure if he intended anyone to take this up or.
Okay.
But for sure he didn't hate this industry, or I don't see that side of it. My mom was not too keen when I wanted to learn. She said, if you want to learn, it's fine.
Okay.
She was more or less indifferent. But after that, I think she kind of supported. There's this transition phase where you kind of start to obsess. First they need to keep telling you to practice and take you to classes and concerts and basically.
And how did that initially happen? Did you ask to learn, or did your mother or your father say you should learn something?
So usual thing, I was just banging on everything that I could.
Okay.
I think intrinsically I liked, movement and whatever it is. So my mom said some extracurricular activity, let it be music, let him learn Mridangam. And it was not a very high profile, I'm going to put him to this great Vidwan. It was some music school, some Bharati Devan music school where I learned with 10 other people.
Okay.
So it was a very normal thing, some Tuesday, Friday, after school we go there. So then that teacher said, I think this boy has something in him, so why don't you take him to someone else?
Okay.
So from there it transitioned into someone who could, come home and teach me. So I learned from Nelle Balaji sir for 4 years.
Okay.
So he used to come home and it was more like pampering sessions. He used to come, we used to eat something and then he'd say okay, I'll teach you something. So it was like that. And then after that, I saw one other student playing the Mridangam in one of the bhajan competitions. By then, I was in the school team playing bhajans.
How old would you have been when doing this bhajan competition?
5th grade,
okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
So I saw this boy playing really well and I said I want to learn from this boy's guru. So, and then my mom spoke to his mom and they realized that it was Guru Ayodhya sir.
Okay.
Said I want to learn from. Then she said, you can't just learn, we need to go and ask if he'll be okay. So let me try to find out and also check with your previous guru if he's okay.
Right.
There are too many things involved. So like she did all the hard work that way. So yeah, she spoke, and I don't think there was any hard feelings anywhere. So my guru said, okay, fine, but he just has to be dedicated. He has to spend that time. So that way there was no concession saying you're already this person's grandson. You just have to come do the drill. I'm not going to teach you, first whatever years. If you go through my student for the first 3 or 4 years, then maybe we'll just take it from there. And that was exactly the drill. I learned from Dorai sir's student, Uraur P.K. Babu sir, for 3 years.
Okay.
He trained me the fundamentals. He had to tweak everything that I learned.
So that was going to be my next question. Did you have to relearn what you had?
Certain things, right? So because we all have different schools of thought and fingering changes, aesthetics, everything is very perspective. So he said like, I wouldn't want you to play it this way, why don't you play it this way? Again, my guru, I found that he's the most open person, where when I was learning from him, he used to encourage me to go and listen to every kacheri possible. He said, go and listen to this person, what did that person play? I used to take notes back then, and I used to tell him like, I heard this, and then can I play this? And the maximum critiquing thing that he has said is, Vandame, or that's the maximum thing he would say. He would never say, don't play this, do that, never. So, but some amount of, unlearning, relearning had to be done when you move to one person. And that was more natural. Like it was, you felt like you were kind of inadequate when you heard something and you were trying to reproduce it, and then you will be like, okay, I just have to look at it differently.
So when you heard that student of Guruvayur Dorai sir, was it the sound of what he was playing that attracted you? The sound, the style? What was it that attracted you?
I think his name is B. Srivatsan, by the way. He's not into music now.
Okay.
He plays wonderfully. So I think it was the sound and the way he played, because you're trained to think in one direction, right? And then when you see something else, you get fascinated by it. The approach of it, how it is, because again, playing for bhajans is a very, very different thing. You're playing with 13 other people. Right. So that energy, and you just have to carry the entire group, and it's a different kind of a performance. So I think the approach, the sound, and everything else. So that kind of attracted me at that point.
Okay. And so which year would you have started with Guruvayur Dorai sir?
2002.
2002. Okay. And that was when you started with him or with his student?
With his student.
With his student. So it was around 2005 when you started having classes directly?
Yeah, but it was the same house. So basically he used to live, it was Gurukula Vasam for him.
Okay.
He used to listen to all my classes.
Okay.
He used to be in the living room.
Okay.
The class used to happen in one of the music rooms. He used to listen, and then he used to give me small suggestions and feedback saying, work on this, work on that. And then eventually it became about group classes with his senior students.
I see.
And then you start learning, and you kind of know where you are placed, with respect to others, and then you start working hard. That's the stage when my mom said, do you really want to get into it? Because that's not music class anymore, right? That's you start to think differently, you start working hard. No one is asking you to work anymore. No one's saying, wake up at 6 a.m. and practice before school. That kind of crossed.
Right.
So that is the stage when my mom said, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's slightly serious. And I told her yes. So
until that point, you would go for class, and how often was class since 2005?
Once or twice a week.
Okay, once or twice a week. So when you come back home, would you be very diligent with practice? Would you sit down for practice by yourself? You didn't need anyone to tell you, Praveen, sit, practice?
No, I was not this sincere kid who practiced. So I didn't have the inclination to practice at all. I loved playing, but I kind of didn't like practicing.
Okay.
I loved playing with other people. Because my school was so much into music, that when I went to school, they said go to music room. You're okay academically, you're okay doing, you don't have to give you extra support. So you just go to your music room, do your thing, and that way the institution was extremely supportive.
Okay.
Not just for me, not very favoritism, not like that, but generally, if you had something in you, they said go do it.
Okay.
So that way I loved playing with 14 people. If it was 5 hours, I would just go. But come back home and play for 45 minutes, I'd be whining.
Okay.
By myself,
okay.
In one room, playing the same lesson, getting better at it or whatever it is. I was not. So yeah, that phase my mom literally had to push me to practice every day.
So she did push you to practice.
For sure.
So even though she might not have necessarily been that interested in your taking up music, the fact that you've taken it up, she expected you to put in the necessary practice.
I think there's one difference. Even at that point, she didn't want me to take up music full time.
Okay.
Or take up music at all. Do whatever you're doing properly.
Okay.
If you're learning a lesson,
good.
She said, like, when you go there next class, I want you to excel. Like, I want you to basically respect that time, that effort put in by that guru,
right.
So that when you go back, he's at least happy seeing the output.
Correct.
So that way, like, you know, I think that's normal. Looking at it now, it's normal.
Right.
But back then, again, like, I was just like playful and whatever it is. So I didn't quite understand. So
right.
that kind of transitioned after a while.
And so when it came to the point when you were sitting in class with these other senior students, by that point you have become self-motivated.
Yeah, at that point it was a much more very serious drill also. It's a very, so Babu sir is very strict. At that point my mom was like, okay, why do you want to go through this? This is not fun. She said, I don't want to see you going through this. This is all like usual parents. I said, so basically there's a Sai Baba Koil next to my guru's place. So I said, just leave me here and go to Sai Baba Koil. I will deal with this and come to Sai Baba Koil.
Oh.
So at that point I took the decision saying,
okay.
I just don't want the easy way out. I want to go through this. Whatever it is, I'll go through. Like, I want to give it a shot. So at that point, my mom will still quote this always.
Okay.
That is the thing that made me, you know, kind of secure that you are doing something that's true to your heart and you really want to do it and you're just not fooling around. So
okay. But even though Babu sir was very strict, Dorai sir himself was more mild-mannered.
He never used to say anything. It was just about இப்படி இருக்கலாமே அப்படி இருக்கலாமே இது வேண்டாம். That is the maximum you'll hear from him. So you really have to be extremely attentive of each of his movements, I would say, not just words from his mouth,
I see.
but if he's just moving his hand like this, then it means something. So and most of my learning was from his live concert. So he was performing every day back then. Like so that was a huge learning curve for me to carry his instrument, go with him in his car,
okay.
to go to that venue, meet different musicians, to listen to different kinds of music, and then come back home, unpack the instrument, and then go back home and have dinner. So that was, again, like I used to have dinner at 11:30 in the night after coming back home when I was in school. So that way, even my schooling was a very different kind of a schooling. But that is like my Mridangam notebook will have only like a few pages of lessons.
Okay.
Other than that, it's just experiential learning.
So you would sit on stage behind
with
him.
it.
Okay.
So the first few, like I think the first year or so, I didn't understand anything that was happening on stage.
Okay.
It was extremely like why am I even sitting here?
Right.
And then you start slowly picking up, and this is exactly how I learned Vishnu Sahasranama. Like I used to go for Sahasranama classes.
Okay.
First they said like come sit, and then they started chanting. And I was so bored the first 2 months. And then what happens is you start chanting after that. It kind of, you know, you
filters.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of learning it's very interesting. I think even now I won't be able to do it because that age is crucial, right? So same way in music, the way I picked up even talams or the different kinds of placements or positions in Mridangam, solo playing and stuff like that was entirely through concerts, live concerts, sitting on stage, what is being appreciated, what is being, you know, what is gelling really well with another musician. Those things can't be taught, right? So you have to be on stage to absorb that energy for you to feel, oh, there's something exciting happening, because you don't know what's exciting, right? You have.
Would you sit in an angle where you can see both sides of the Mridangam?
No, I wouldn't be able to see the right side.
That's why I was saying, but the right is he's right-handed, right?
Yeah, so right is the predominant side.
Right.
So I won't be able to see the fingering.
Okay.
But
okay.
That's how it works.
Okay. Okay, because nowadays I see students sit on the floor below the stage, which actually will give them a view of the right hand.
I was sitting behind him.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter whether it was left-handed or right-handed because they change the position of the Mridangist anyway. So you're not going to see the dominant side, period, if you sat there. Yeah, that's true. Okay. And would you come back and ask questions? Guru, sir,
so basically he's much older. So for me to even for me to start a conversation, I'll think twice. Okay. So I won't just say, And it was not like, oh, he's my grandfather, I can say anything to him. He was my guru.
Okay.
So though there
Was that an impression that he kind of projected, or was that something you just felt?
I think as a kid I was also a very kind of a shy kid, not too outspoken, stuff like that.
Okay.
So the aura of the concert left me in kind of an awe.
Okay.
So I'll be really quiet,
Okay.
trying to process whatever.
Okay.
If I had doubts, not that night but maybe next day,
During class? maybe?
during class,
Okay.
so I'll wait for the moment and maybe make notes and stuff like that. But he used to make, like, if he's in a really really good mood, he wants to talk, he would ask me, "Innikku enna nadandhathu? What did you notice today? Did you see anything different?" He would certainly ask.
Okay. Now, how did you learn the art of accompanying for
Right.
music? How
Right.
to individually accent? So you have the same piece, Chakani Rajamargamu, that 10 people will sing 10 different ways. Or even one artist might sing 3 different ways, 3 different times. Right? So how did you learn that? You know, how did you
That
proceed?
happened in one class for me.
Okay.
One session when, so sir used to sing a lot, like
Okay.
in all our classes. It also had impromptu RTP sessions, like he used to sing one Pallavi and then say, like, play one solo. The first time I was just like blinking, I didn't even know what it was. So one class he was like he was singing Sogasuka Mridanga Talamu. He said, like, I see that you're playing some small performance, though half-hour kacheris and all you're playing. What are you playing for the songs and whatever it is? And I said, like, I don't know, you've taught me talams, taught me some lessons and some nades, so I try to superimpose it on the songs, and based on listening I just do something. So he started singing. He was singing the Pallavi and I was playing. I was not looking at him, I was looking at his talam and I was just playing. He stopped after Pallavi. He said, like, can you hear what I'm singing? I said, kind of. He said, like, that's the main thing. I'm hearing what you're playing, which I should do as a singer. You should be hearing what I'm singing. If you are taking talam as the medium, then you're playing a solo, right? For playing a solo, you need a medium. So talam as a medium, then you're playing a solo. This is not going to work.
Okay.
It's an ensemble, and we all need to hear ourselves. That really changed me. I said, okay, so if I'm playing in a room here, and if my instrument is really loud, I should really try to understand what the decibel level of the vocalist is and try to play with that, because this is not like you're accompanying for a vocalist. It's not even that. It's more that it's like an ensemble where only if you start to collaborate on that level will that energy happen, like the transfer happens, right? So that class changed my perspective, and then of course listening from that perspective. Okay, how has he approached playing for MS Amma? How has he approached playing for Veena Balachandar sir? Because in two very different sets. How does this happen? So you start to understand what is it playing for instruments, what is it playing for male vocalists, female vocalists, texture, tone, and then also choose instruments based on the artist. Like I do that a lot. Like because I play 2 variations of the same instrument, like the kappi and the kuchi mridangam.
Oh, you play both?
I play both.
Okay.
So if it's a really loud, when I play with the quartet, Nadaswaram, Tawil, violin and mridangam, it's a really loud outfit, like where you have energetic music playing. I can't play the kappi mridangam there. I have to do a kuchi mridangam. So that day, even if it's a rendrakatta shruti, I'll take a kuchi mridangam. Whereas if I'm playing for a Veena Kacheri, like one Ramana Balachandar is playing, he also plays in Disha, I wouldn't take that instrument at all. Because it's going to be really loud for me and I wouldn't be able to control the sound. I'll just be like blasting it.
So is it generally the idea that the kuchi is louder than the kappi?
The kuchi is more resonant.
The kuchi is more resonant.
It is more, I mean, like you can't categorically say this is loud, that is soft.
Okay.
But this has more resonance and for sure kuchi is that way louder.
So then after that you started listening to recordings, and would you play along sometimes?
That is one other very interesting thing that my mom forced me to do. I loved listening to music. Carnatic music was, I used to listen to 5 hours, 6 hours a day.
Nice.
So that was
So that
my
would be
learning.
morning when you wake up, and this is what ages are you talking
So
about?
basically at that point we had so many performances. Kutti kuchi kacheris used to happen,
Okay.
and they used to give some edo X amount,
Yeah.
and I used to like have it as one idea, and I bought one MP3 player. I still remember that. And I used to have, it was some 2 GB or something, and 2 GB full of music I used to have. Keep listening to it on loop.
Okay.
then what happened? So 5-6 hours I used to record my guru's kacheris, come back and listen to it a lot, and then like listen to other kacheris, and then again I kind of pulled in a lot of funds and then bought the 160 GB iPod. That was my biggest investment when I was in school.
Okay.
So I had 160.
What grade approximately? 9th, 10th grade?
10th grade.
10th grade. Okay.
So I had 160 GB of Carnatic music in my iPod, which is impossible to like finish for a school kid, right? But I used to listen to Carnatic music. That was at the time a full learning.
Okay.
He said like I got collections from my guru and I got collections from some of my friends. That is like my that's the place where I learned.
And when you listen, do you pay a slight extra attention to the percussion as a percussionist? That is, how is this percussionist accenting the music?
For sure. I mean, like when you're learning that instrument, I think that inclination is there.
Okay.
Again, the perspective of listening also changes with your experience, right? The first thing is you very fundamentally what is the fingering of what he has played.
Okay.
Right? What is happening, and then the approach.
Is that something you can decipher from theory?
Some of it.
You can imagine, you can kind of picturize what fingers you would have used and where on the surface of the mridangam you would have tapped.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that happens, and then after that you start to realize that he's playing with another musician. What's happening between them? What is the vocalist doing? How is the vocalist reacting to what the mridangam is doing? Those things you start to understand. So the listening experience becomes slightly wholesome. I think this is a separate art form. Like according to me, listening to music is one separate art form, and you need to be trained in that to.
I was just going to say, I think there needs to be a lecture demonstration on how to listen to music.
Right.
I think it would be a very valuable lecture demonstration.
100%. So that way, I've been very grateful that people around me like influenced me to listen to a lot of music. That way, more than playing in one room, playing one lesson, everyone around me said listen to more music. So that way...
You were just saying, and I think we lost the train of thought. When I was asking, did you play along with the recordings? You said this was something my mother insisted on.
Yeah, so she said play along. Since our music is not metronome driven, right? It's the pace changes. Like, so it's impossible for you to play with the recording. It's impossible. It won't sound good.
Right.
Because you can't anticipate a pace change in an audio recording.
Right.
So it will sound bad. So my mom said, "You're not playing well. See, like how this is not sounding good." Though she didn't interfere in the artistic choices I made, she said like, "You're playing something, but it's just not happening." I said like, "But it's like I don't know, but it's not happening." So yeah, that my mom insisted on doing that. I also did it. It helped for a while, but then I understood that you don't have to play along even for you to practice.
Okay.
You can practice and then you can listen, and then your mind should map how you would play even in that thing. So rather than sitting with one instrument in front of a recording, you can process that music in your mind
and then sit and do that solo.
Do that, or like play that way. Again, I had like musicians around me. Shruti Sagar used to be my neighbor.
Oh.
So we used to be in the same floor. He was D14, I was D17. He used to practice 4 or 5 hours a day.
Okay.
So he was that kind of a person. So because of him, I practiced.
Okay.
So he used to say like, "Vada practice pannalam." So whatever I heard, I say like, "Do you know this kriti? Like I want to play for this kriti." He used to play.
Nice. Okay.
So and then he used to say like, "What korvai are you learning? I want to like learn what it is." Then he used to put talam for that, and then we used to come up with something.
I see.
And Srivatsan was also there. So that way, more than me playing with the recording, me listening to a recording and then playing with other musicians kind of gave me a different...
But you did have the luxury of being able to practice with music.
100%.
So it was not only at concerts. You had Shruti Sagar available and with whom you could sit, and you had a melody that 100%. Somebody could play, which was like impromptu, which you couldn't have memorized. So what is your thought process like when you're playing in a concert? What is going through your mind? Are you listening to the music? Are you, obviously you're listening to the music, but what other thoughts are going? Are you listening purely rhythmically? What are you thinking about when the artist is doing a raga alapana or thana, where the mridangam is not needed?
Yeah, so that is one other major thing that I learned, that I have to be very carefully listening to the ragam, because the way they're singing the ragam is the reflection of how they will sing the Neraval or the Swaram.
Okay.
Because if I'm not paying attention during Ragam, if I'm just practicing what I want to play in that Tanya Vartanam, or mostly I won't even know what Talam it will be.
Right.
Even if I want to revise my lessons,
Right.
It is going to be very difficult when I'm playing for the Neraval, because it is the same musician with the same thought process
Okay.
who just did an improvisation without words.
Okay.
Now you have words, mind is going to think in the similar direction.
Okay.
So every crescendo, every ending will have reflections of his or her
Okay.
ragam.
Okay.
So that way, even when I'm not playing, I make it a point to completely be present there,
Okay.
because one, I want to be involved in that energy, because I think when I listen to kacheris, when some people don't, or when they start, doing something or kanak, or when they talk, it's very distracting for me.
Okay.
As a listener, I find there's something really important happening there. It's not a break time for you.
Right.
So that way, that I made a decision again, like while listening to kacheris, like one thing that I made a note of saying, don't be distracted on stage. So that's one thing. So, and that's what goes through my mind. When the song plays, I think it's a combination of how the words are split.
Okay.
Like that is my, more than talam. Like I'm the beat keeper or the timekeeper here.
Right.
Is not what I'm trying to do. I'm
Okay.
actually not trying to be perfect there.
Okay.
If I want, because I also function in a studio environment where I work with a metronome. There's no question of any grey there.
Okay.
Unless you are right or you are wrong.
Okay.
So the recordist will say, do it again.
Yeah.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
Whereas here, if I'm just saying, oh, you're running, let me slow you down because I am the beat keeper, it ruins the concept.
Absolutely.
So if you're running, let me come with you, but let's keep a balance.
Yeah.
If I'm running, then you also keep like a
Yeah,
balance. So
yeah.
I'm not saying, again, this is not like this, I'm this percussion who's just managing everything on stage. No, it's driven by each one of us. So that way, how the words are split is my median more than the talam.
Okay.
That's why I don't mostly look at the talam while playing.
Okay.
And
So the talam does run within you. You just keep, it is there
For
within
sure.
you.
That's one thing that I was trained even when I was learning lessons, where I don't just play lessons. Number one, you play the lesson. Number two, you say the lesson with talam so that you know where that lesson, each and every stroke is placed.
Okay.
Number three, when you're playing, you play the talam in your mind.
In your mind. Okay.
So third step is where
Is
you
there
use
any
your
exercise that you can use to actually run that talam
So
in your mind?
it comes in stages. So first is just playing, where you just get dexterity and like things like that sorted. Then you say it with talam, then you get the positions sorted. Then I played with the metronome. Every lesson that I play, I was trained to play with the metronome.
Okay.
So that I am not grey anywhere.
This was Nellai Balaji sir or?
Actually, it was, my guru didn't insist on metronome training. He said, it's not necessary, but if you want, I was so fascinated by technology then.
Okay.
So for me, computers and everything was so interesting. I said, I want to play everything with the metronome.
Okay.
After that, I switched off the metronome and I used my foot. This is again like one common training where
Right.
you can keep time with your foot sometimes. So that happened, and after that, you kind of internalize it. So this is a 4 or 5 stage process.
Does this work for every talam for you? Like
Yes. Even if it's a
Tishanadai, Kandanadai, Mishranadai.
in fact, if you don't have a reference in you, according to me, playing it makes no sense.
Okay.
My students, they get like maximum because they play so well. But what will happen is they'll have this disconnect between where the talam is, or what's the median, and what they're playing. Because what they're playing will be correct. I'll just stop them in between and say, where's the talam? And then they'll be like, no, I don't know. And what's the point in playing?
Okay.
So that is, I'm very particular about that.
Okay. So what stories have you heard of your grandfather growing up? Or what is your earliest memory of an allusion to your grandfather?
I think everyone talks about Manuel Srinivas sir, because that's one usual association that everyone says. And that story where he played in this temple in Tinagar, that was when my tata saw him playing. And then on the kacheri kegumbodhu, he basically my tata really loved what he was doing. He said why don't you come home? And he invited him home.
Okay.
And then he played, and then he was so stunned, and he said you should be whatever. Then he said okay, let me, I will play for you. And then he played, not just him, but my Kullu Tata Valaiman Shanmusundaram Pillai on the Tavil, him on the Mridangam, Vikku Vinayakaram sir on the Katam, Harishankar sir on the Kanjira, and Sikil Bhaskaran sir on the violin.
Right.
So it was like one huge full bench concert.
Of
I have this
senior,
picture
highly reputed.
of this, I don't know, some 14-year-old boy sitting ரொம்ப குட்டியா இருக்கும். The picture itself is like unbelievably precious. So அது சுத்தி இவ்ளோ வித்வான் உட்கார்ந்துட்டு வாசிக்கிற இது. Then I was thinking, okay, clearly he had some vision, like he was just not playing the game what was expected of him or whatever. He said like this boy is talented and that's it. Other side is, of course, everyone knows that Srinivas sir is genius, the maestro, right? Like and my tata would say இப்போ நான் இல்லைன்னா வேற யாரோ பண்ணிருக்க போறா. So that's, but that idea of bringing everyone together and to do something and the collective varadu was, I thought, was a really special thing. And also convincing all the Mridangam artists to play for Srinu, not just him playing, to call. My guru has told me, like, I was so skeptical, but Upendran called me and he said ஏதோ பாலமுரளி கச்சேரி, because he was playing for Balamurali sir a lot at that point. So பாலமுரளி கச்சேரி, நீ உனக்கு என்ன கச்சேரி வாசிக்கணுமோ வாசி, I'm okay, I can talk to either parties, but I would really want you to play for Srinivas because I think this boy is something. And he will also tremendously benefit from, you know.
அவர் சொன்னதனால
Dora sir வந்து I think he went, before playing, he went and listened to one of his kacheris, and upway he knew, oh my god, this boy is something else. So I think
he helped people, you know, think outside of maybe some reserves that they had in built.
ஏன்னா அப்ப இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்டல் பயஸ் ரொம்ப ஜாஸ்தி, வெஸ்டர்ன் இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட், அது ஒரு டாயின் டாயின் ஒரு சத்தம் வருது, இதெல்லாம் நிறைய கேட்டிருக்கோம் நம்ம. So அதெல்லாம் தாண்டி when he did that was very interesting even as a kid, because musically I was surrounded with a lot of people who were really good, who were inspiring, and when they played my tata's recording I was like, wow, very nice. But this is very different as a person, as someone who has been in this industry and who had a or a journey of his own.
Do you have a good collection of your grandfather's
some
records?
Music,
you have, you do have a good collection.
Namaskaram, I am Praveen Sparsh, grandson of Sri Thanjavur Upendran and disciple of Guru Ayyadurai sir. I have actually never seen my grandfather, and Thanjavur Upendran as an identity for me is defined by people around me. It's been 29 years since he passed away, and even now when someone is talking about him or when someone refers to him, they often tear up or go into this really emotional personal space, which I think is extremely special. What it takes to be Thanjavur Upendran is a question that I ask myself every day, and I try to answer and I try to live up to the legacy that he has left behind. His disciples were like his family, particularly Bhupati Mama, Narayanan Mama, Ganapati sir, Kalyanakrishnan sir, Srinivasan sir from Bangalore, and Kumar sir and many others. I have truly lot of respect and admiration towards the way they see my grandfather, and on behalf of the entire Thanjavur Upendran family, I would like to thank each one of them for coming together and remembering my grandfather every year. Bhupati Mama suggested that I play a small snippet in this video tribute. He also mentioned that my grandfather was fascinated by Kanda Kandam. Unfortunately, I don't have any recordings of him playing it. So here's a little something that I put together as a dedication to him.